Hi, my name is Leanne Hockey, and today I'll be discussing constructivism and its role as an effective classroom practice. To fully determine this effectiveness, I'd first like to clarify what is learning. According to Schul and Unrod, learning involves the acquisition of new skills, knowledge or understanding via experience that has an impact on thinking and behaviour. Schul goes on to say that learning may be harder to explain than first thought. Learning can mean different things depending on your perspective, and this subjective nature can impact its usage by theorists. When evaluating learning or how theories define learning, it may be best to avoid comparison and focus more on how they complement each other. For example, Smith outlines the role of the educator in one theory as arranges environment to elicit desired response, whereas in another theory, the role of the educator is described as works to establish communities of practice in which conversation and participation can occur. Clearly, comparison can be influenced by perspective and to what level a theory is broken down. Danforth agrees that theories have a more complementary nature. He defines constructivism as a broad set of interrelated theories that proposes that knowledge is at least as much a human construction as a discovery. Woolfolk and Margetts believe constructivism has at its focal point the learner's contribution and place great importance on both the student and society in the learning process. According to Logren, learning by interaction, self-regulation, fostering individual meaning in and from the learning experience, and learning with and from others are the tenets of constructivism. Egan and Kauchek state that, as the name suggests, learners construct rather than record their knowledge. Logren goes on to elaborate that knowledge is constructed with the aid of schema that facilitate the continuing addition of new information to their existing knowledge base, resulting in increasingly complex cognitive development and thus enlightened personal understanding. Duchamp and McMahon concur that reflection is central to constructivism, and the Bloom's taxonomy assists educators frame their questions to maximize thinking, reflecting, and problem solving. The Education Broadcasting Corporation's article elaborates that in the classroom, the constructivist view of learning can point towards a number of different teaching practices. In the most general sense, it usually means encouraging students to use active techniques like experiments, real-world problem solving, to create more knowledge and then to reflect on and talk about what they are doing and how their understanding is changing. The teacher's role is to make sure she understands the student's pre-existing conceptions and guides the activity to address them and then build on them. Constructivist teachers engage students to constantly assess the activity as helping them gain understanding. By questioning themselves and their strategies, students in the constructivist classroom ideally become expert learners. This gives them ever-broadening tools to keep learning. With a well-planned classroom environment, the students essentially learn how to learn. It's kind of maybe like a spiral where they continuously reflect on their experiences. Students find their ideas gaining in complexity and power, and they develop increasingly strong abilities to integrate new information. One of the teacher's main roles becomes to encourage this learning and reflection process. Contrary to criticisms by some educators, constructivism does not dismiss the active role of the teacher or the value of expert knowledge. It simply modifies that role so that teachers help students to construct the knowledge rather than to reproduce a series of facts. The constructivist teacher provides tools such as problem-solving and inquiry-based learning activities with which students formulate and test their ideas, draw conclusions and inferences, and pool and convey their knowledge in a collaborative learning environment. Constructivism transforms the student from a passive recipient of information to an active participant in the learning process. Always guided by the teacher, students construct their knowledge actively rather than just mechanically, ingesting knowledge from teacher or textbook. Constructivism is also often misconstrued as a learning theory that compels students to reinvent the wheel. In fact, Constructivism taps into and triggers the students' innate curiosity about the world and how things work. Students do not reinvent the wheel, but rather attempt to understand how it turns and how it functions. They become engaged by applying their existing knowledge and real-world experience, learning to hypothesize, testing their theories, and ultimately drawing conclusions from their findings. The Education Broadcasting Corporation discusses critics of collaborative aspects of constructionist classrooms, alluding to the possibility that only a few voices or interpretations may dominate the group's conclusions, and that dissenting opinion may be forced to conform with the consensus. Negotiation is one of the primary aims and skills being taught within the constructivist collaborative style of learning. The level of success of these skills, which are essential in the real world, should not be seen as a limitation but as a strength of this model. In the constructivist classroom, the focus has shifted from the teacher to the students. The classroom is no longer a place where the teacher, or expert, pours knowledge into passive students. They're not this empty vessel that needs to be filled. In the constructivist model, the students are urged to be actively involved in their own process of learning. The teacher functions more as a facilitator who coaches, mediates, prompts, and helps students develop and assess their understanding and thereby their learning. One of the teacher's biggest jobs becomes asking good questions. In the constructivist classroom, both teacher and students think of knowledge not as inert factoids to be memorized, but as a dynamic, ever-changing view of the world we live in, and the ability to successfully stretch and explore that view. Constructivism for me is synonymous with creativity and a definite way towards creating an effective teaching and learning environment. Thank you.